Okay, so, we always see those headlines about like potential changes coming down the line,
Yeah.
policy shifts and all that, right?
Right.
But today we're going to like really dig into something that could really change how this country deals with disasters.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
If the claims we're looking at actually, hold up.
Exactly. And that's what
That's
we're here to do, right? Dive deep and see what's what.
exactly.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we're talking about like a really fundamental possible shift
Oh, yeah.
in federal disaster relief.
Huge, huge, if true.
Huge if true. And we're basing our exploration today on some pretty big claims that have been made public recently.
Definitely some eyebrow raising stuff for sure.
Yeah, and specifically we've got a transcript from a recent Ring of Fire YouTube video.
Okay, yeah, I've seen those guys. They're pretty out there sometimes.
Yeah, so this transcript, it details some pretty serious allegations about Department of Homeland Security
DHS.
and the future of FEMA.
Oh wow, FEMA. Okay, so this is big. This is like the big leagues of disaster relief.
Yeah, exactly. The Federal Emergency Management Agency.
Right.
So everybody knows FEMA.
When there's a hurricane, when there's a tornado, FEMA's there.
They're there.
Right.
So our goal today in this deep dive is to like really get to the heart of the matter.
Cut through the noise. Right.
What exactly is being claimed about this potential like elimination of FEMA?
Elimination. Wow. Okay.
And maybe even more importantly, what could the real world consequences be
Yeah, because that's what really matters, right?
for certain states and individuals
Real people.
who rely on FEMA support
Right. Right.
during and after a crisis?
Because when disaster strikes, these are the folks who are going to be most affected.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's important to remember as we go through this that our source material today is a transcript of a YouTube video.
Right. So it's one lens through which we're viewing this.
Exactly. And we're going to explore the details of these claims
Yeah.
as they are laid out in this transcript.
Okay. Sounds good.
Okay, so let's unpack this thing.
All right. Let's do it.
The video transcript starts with a pretty direct assertion.
Yeah. They don't really beat around the bush.
No, they don't.
Okay.
So what exactly is being claimed about FEMA's future?
So the central claim, according to the video, is that Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem announced in a
okay.
cabinet meeting the initiation of a plan to eliminate FEMA.
Wow.
And the video frames this as a direct consequence of what it describes as a sustained push from Donald Trump.
Okay.
So we're not talking about a minor adjustment or reorganization,
No.
but like a complete dismantling of the agency as it currently exists.
Wow. Okay, so if this claim is accurate,
Right.
this isn't just like like I said, a reshuffling of responsibilities. This is like the end of FEMA.
As we know it, right?
Yeah.
That's how the video presents it.
That's a pretty significant assertion
Definitely.
with potentially huge implications.
No doubt. No doubt.
So just to be clear, the video uses pretty strong language,
Oh, yeah.
suggesting that FEMA would be essentially broken down.
Pieces, parts, yeah.
Yeah, its components dispersed.
Not just reform.
Not just like, we're going to make FEMA better.
Right, right. Like a complete dissolution.
Exactly.
Wow.
And the video doesn't stop with just the announcement itself.
Of course not. This is Ring of Fire, right?
Right. It goes right to the next thing.
Got to keep people clicking.
Exactly. So who would be most affected by such a change?
Right. The human cost.
That's what they get into. So what's the argument presented there?
Okay, so the video makes the case that the elimination of FEMA would disproportionately impact states that traditionally received the largest amounts of federal disaster relief funding.
Interesting.
It specifically names Florida, Texas, and Louisiana.
Okay, some of the usual suspects there.
Yeah, right on the Gulf Coast Hurricane Alley.
Right, exactly. So those three states are consistently among the top recipients of FEMA funds.
Yeah, makes sense geographically.
And the transcript also points out that all three of these states currently have Republican leadership.
Okay, so now we're getting into the politics of it.
Right. Okay, so the argument is that these states, which are often seen as key parts of a particular political base,
Right.
would ironically be the ones most vulnerable if FEMA were to be eliminated.
It's like the opposite of what you might expect.
Yeah, so what's the reasoning behind this connection?
Okay, so the video offers a couple of reasons for this.
Right.
First, it suggests that regardless of their political alignment, these states are geographically positioned in areas prone to significant natural disasters.
Sure.
Hurricanes, flooding, other events.
Right. Mother Nature doesn't care who you voted for.
Exactly. It's going to hit you regardless.
Exactly. So they need that federal assistance.
Right.
They're just in a tough spot geographically.
And then the second reason the video gives is that it raises concerns about the fiscal capacity of these states.
Okay, so even if they have strong leadership, they might not have the money.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Even with the best intentions, their budgets might not be equipped to handle the massive costs associated with major disaster recovery.
Yeah, you need the feds to come in and help.
Without federal support, it's a tough proposition.
Yeah, so the video expresses skepticism about how effectively disaster relief funds might be managed at the state level.
Right, because FEMA has that whole structure in place, right? All that oversight.
Right.
The concern is that funds could be misallocated or stretched thin.
Well, yeah.
Potentially leaving citizens even more vulnerable in the aftermath of a disaster.
Wow. Okay, so that raises questions about the complexities of disaster relief and, the need for a dedicated federal agency.
Right. Expertise matters in these situations.
Absolutely. All right, so to bring this down to a personal level?
Yeah, because we're talking about real people's lives here.
Exactly. The video transcript includes a specific story.
Oh, okay, a case study.
Yeah. Can you tell us about that?
Sure. So the transcript shares an anecdote about an individual living in Florida.
Okay.
In a coastal area.
Of course, Florida.
Right. Prone to flooding.
So many hurricanes.
Exactly. And this person explains that due to their location in a high-risk flood zone, they are unable to secure flood insurance through private insurance companies.
So nobody wants to insure them.
It's too risky for the private market.
Right.
Their only viable option for flood insurance, they state, is through FEMA's National Flood Insurance Program.
So FEMA is it for them?
It's the safety net.
The backstop.
Exactly.
Okay, so if FEMA were to be eliminated, what would be the immediate consequence for this individual?
Well, according to the video, this person and potentially a large number of people in similar coastal situations would lose their flood insurance coverage.
Wow, okay.
And the transcript emphasizes that if a major hurricane or significant storm surge were to hit their community.
Which is not a matter of if, but when in Florida.
Right, it's going to happen.
Yeah.
Their homes could be severely damaged or destroyed, and they would have no insurance payout to help them rebuild.
Oh, man.
The video really stresses that many people in these communities lack the personal savings to absorb such a devastating financial loss.
So it's not like they've got a backup plan.
No, they're relying on this insurance.
Yeah. So this is like financial ruin.
That's what the video is suggesting.
Wow. And the video argues that this isn't an isolated case, right?
Oh, no, this is just the tip of the iceberg.
This is like a much broader impact.
Right. It's suggesting a much broader impact on these communities as a whole.
Exactly. So what's the bigger picture here?
Well, the video expands on this personal story to argue that it's representative of a widespread issue in many coastal and flood-prone areas across the country.
Makes sense.
It contends that entire communities rely on FEMA for flood insurance.
Because they have to.
Because the private market either doesn't offer coverage or makes it unaffordably expensive.
Right. It's too risky.
Due to the high levels of risk.
So FEMA steps in.
FEMA fills that gap.
Okay. And the transcript reiterates that many residents in these areas simply do not have the financial means.
They don't have the money.
To independently recover from a major flood event.
Right. They're living paycheck to paycheck.
Yeah. So if they lose their homes and lack insurance,
it's catastrophic.
It's like starting over from nothing.
With nothing, yeah.
Wow. So this raises the specter of significant displacement.
People having to leave their homes.
Yeah, and long-term economic hardship for these communities.
Generational poverty, even.
Yeah. Okay, so according to the video, we're looking at potential widespread displacement and economic devastation in these vulnerable coastal regions.
If FEMA and its flood insurance program were to disappear.
Gone.
Yeah, it's a bleak picture.
It is now, the video also delves into the stated reason behind this proposed elimination of FEMA.
Okay, so they're giving a reason for this.
They are. What justification does it present?
So according to the transcript, the justification offered within the video attributed to the administration is the claim that FEMA funds are being utilized to provide support for undocumented immigrants.
Okay.
The video presents this as the reason that Homeland Security Secretary Noem reportedly gave for initiating the process of dismantling the agency during a cabinet meeting.
Wow, that's a significant claim in itself.
It's a bold statement.
It is. And the video doesn't just present this stated reason without any further analysis, does it?
Oh, no, they definitely have thoughts on that.
Right. There's definitely a critical perspective being offered.
Yeah, they're pushing back.
So what's the commentary there?
The video expresses a strong sense of skepticism regarding the stated justification.
Okay, so they're not buying it.
Not really. They're
Yeah.
questioning the validity of the claim,
Okay,
and then they pivot to the potential political ramifications.
because this is all about politics.
Right.
Okay, so what are they saying?
The commentary in the video raises the question of whether the administration truly understands or even cares about the severe negative consequences that the elimination of FEMA could have for their own voter base
Okay.
in these very red states that are so reliant on the agency for disaster relief.
So it's like their own people they'd be hurting.
That's the implication.
And particularly for flood insurance.
Right, where those private options are just not available.
Yeah, it's a really pointed question. Why would a policy that appears to have such a negative impact on states,
Right, it seems counterintuitive.
with strong support for the administration, even be under consideration?
It's a head scratcher.
It is. And the video even goes as far as to suggest a rather extreme potential outcome if FEMA were to be eliminated.
Okay, so what's the worst case scenario?
What is that?
So the video suggests that if residents in high-risk areas, particularly along the coast,
Right.
are no longer able to obtain affordable flood insurance due to the absence of FEMA,
Because FEMA's gone.
right, they might be forced to abandon their homes and relocate permanently.
Wow, like just completely pick up and leave.
Yeah, it's talking about potential large-scale displacement of communities.
Just because they can't afford to live there anymore.
Because they can no longer financially protect themselves from the risks of natural disasters.
Wow, okay, that's a pretty bleak outlook.
It's a dire prediction.
It's okay, so before we delve any deeper, let's take a moment to recap.
All right, let's summarize.
The core arguments and claims that are being presented in this YouTube video transcript.
Good idea.
What are the main points that stand out?
Okay, so the key takeaways from the video, as we've discussed, are several.
Okay.
First, the central claim that Homeland Security Secretary Noem has announced the initiation of FEMA's elimination,
Right.
purportedly at the urging of Donald Trump.
Okay.
Second, the argument that this action would disproportionately harm red states, specifically mentioning Florida, Texas, and Louisiana,
Right.
due to their high reliance on FEMA funding.
Mm-hmm.
Third, the significant emphasis on FEMA's role in providing affordable flood insurance,
Right. The only option for a lot of people.
illustrated by the personal example of a Florida resident who would be left without coverage.
Yeah.
And finally, the stated reason for this proposed elimination, which the video attributes to the administration, is the claim that FEMA funds are being used to support undocumented immigrants,
Okay.
a justification that the video itself views with considerable skepticism.
So they're casting doubt on that reasoning.
Exactly. They're not letting that slide.
Okay, so the video lays out a really concerning scenario.
Yeah, it's pretty alarming.
The potential dismantling of a major federal agency responsible for disaster relief.
And one that so many people depend on.
Exactly. And it outlines some very serious potential consequences,
Real-world impacts.
particularly concerning the availability of flood insurance and the impact on specific states that are highly vulnerable to natural disasters.
The ones that need it most.
Right.
It's a real paradox.
It is. So what's particularly noteworthy here?
Well, from the video's perspective, there's this apparent disconnect between the potential negative impacts on these states and their traditional political alignment.
It's like they're shooting themselves in the foot.
That's what the video seems to be implying.
Yeah, the video seems to suggest a policy that could disproportionately harm the very constituents it ostensibly aims to serve.
Right. It raises questions about motives and priorities.
It certainly raises some significant questions and gives you, the learner, a lot to think about,
Yeah, definitely food for thought.
especially if you have connections to Florida, Texas, Louisiana, or any other region
Right. Any disaster-prone area.
that is prone to natural disasters and relies on federal support.
Because this could have ripple effects across the country.
Absolutely. These are claims that warrant careful consideration and further investigation.
Don't just take our word for it.
No, do your own research.
Exactly.
Okay, so this brings us to a really crucial point to consider as we wrap up.
All right, shoot.
If a major federal agency, like FEMA, were to be significantly altered or eliminated,
Hypothetically.
as this video suggests is a possibility,
Right.
what would be the potential long-term solutions for how our nation prepares for and recovers from disasters?
That's the million-dollar question.
It is, how would the responsibilities for disaster management shift
Interesting.
between the federal government, state, and local authorities and individual citizens?
Because someone has to step in, right?
Right. It's a big question.
It really forces us to think critically about alternative approaches to disaster preparedness. and the fundamental roles of each level of society in managing the ever-increasing risks associated with natural disasters.
Because they're not going away.
No, they're only getting worse.
And we have to be prepared.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, that's all the time we have for today's deep dive.
Wow, that was a lot to unpack.
It was.
Yeah.
But hopefully it gave you, the learner, some things to think about.
And maybe do some more research on your own.
Exactly. Stay safe out there, and we'll see you next time.
See you later.